Hello, Laura Donnelly here from the morning in Kansas. And today I have the wonderful opportunity of speaking with my friend, Pedro, who lives in Paris. He's graciously agreed to speak to us about time. And last week we were supposed to speak about time. And I landed in a time warp or out of control time. I don't know. We'll probably laugh about it some more today. But I met Pedro a couple of years ago, and I follow him on his newsletter, and he always has interesting and thought-provoking things to share and say. And I will let him tell you a little bit more about himself when I bring him on here in a minute. And the healing path, which we're talking about, is just a journey that I think everybody takes sometime in their life, if not all along their life. And the premise of the healing path is that healing happens, and it happens often in unexpected ways. And the people that come on are working with all different areas of healing. And the basic thing is that healing starts in and of ourselves. So I will bring Pedro here onto the screen or camera, and we will just chat away. Hi there. So glad that you could come.
Thank you. Glad. Thanks for inviting me, and I'm glad to be here. And I'm glad that we can talk about time. Is there a more urgent, important, and useful theme? Probably not, other than space. But time is a big deal. Yeah.
It is, and it is somehow flexible.
Quite.
And somebody wrote to me the other day, even when I'm not doing anything, time seems to go by really fast.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me put it this way. I have never read the book called A Brief History of Time by the famous Stephen Hawking. And I'm only mentioning the book because probably no history of time can be brief. And probably because time is a very big deal, and probably because ultimately nobody can really completely understand time. It's too complex an issue, has too many dimensions, it escapes us. We can settle on some conventions like the clock, but I think to actually understand time, I would say it's impossible. And for me, one of the things that's very helpful in life is to relax about impossible things that you can't understand. And you say, okay, I cannot understand time, but I can understand about having a good time. That I can do, and I can, to some degree, control how good a time I will have or how not good a time I will have. So our theme being time, let me just tell you and our listeners, hello listeners, that we will not attempt to define time for the simple reason that it's impossible. Yeah.
And it's with us all the time. You know, I mean, out of time? Do people say something happens out of time? I was trying to think of all of the things people say about time.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And my friend Alice Miriam is here. She has 2 boys, and I imagine that time is a crazy commodity for her.
And for the boys, probably for the boys, different from for the mother. I'm sure their notion of time is each of them, if they has 2 boys, they each have their own notion of time. They live their time differently. They sense it. They occupy time differently. Probably, if it comes to it, they will talk about time differently. So I expect that you're mentioning your friend who is a mother and has 2 boys, because the feeling of time for a mother is different for the feeling of time for a non-mother. Like myself, for instance, I'm not a mother, or rather, I'm also not a father. But truth be told, I think the feeling of time is individual and subjective. So the mother will have a certain feeling. A specific mother with specific children will have a specific feeling. Me sitting here in Paris, I have my own feelings. My wife is in the apartment just on the other side of the door over there. And I think her feeling of time is very different from mine. Probably no 2 people have exactly the same feeling of time at any one time.
Sorry, I think you're right. And the fact that we can actually that humans in general did actually agree on the clock as a means of believe it, that people, we have to have some kind of an agreement about time so that like we can show up to work together, or we could show up here online together. Even though you're in Paris and it's 4 o'clock, and I'm in Kansas and it's 9 o'clock, which is already kind of trippy.
Right.
And then we had the sundial, and then we do daylight savings time. And like, it's like, can you really save time? Can you really save daylight? I don't think so.
Save daylight, that's good. Yeah. Well, look, you said something that I'm not sure if I completely agree with. So let me underline it, and then I can say what I think. And then you say, Pedro, you and I, of course, we don't agree. We have different feelings about time. And you mentioned the clock, and you said something like, well, we had to agree on some dimension of time on the clock. And what I feel is that there is no agreement about the clock. That people feel very differently about the clock, and they live the clock differently. And there are people for whom the clock is an abstraction. There are nations for whom the clock is an abstraction. So I would say the clock, what we call the clock, the symbol of the clock, is a very useful aspect of time, but I don't think it's universally agreed. I think it's widely shared, but different people in different peoples have very different relationships with the clock. To give you an example, I grew up in Brazil, and archetypically, concerts in Brazil at the time when I was growing up, if they were in the evening, they started at 9 o'clock. The idea is that you had dinner first and then you went to the concert. But usually, no concert would ever start before 9:15, sometimes 9:20, and sometimes 9:30. The idea that 9 o'clock is 9 o'clock was not generally agreed upon. It was a ballpark figure or something like this. So even though the clock said 9 o'clock, it is 9 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen, it's 9 o'clock, the ladies and the gentlemen would be chatting, some would be smoking outside, some would be arriving, some would be waiting for their friends. And that was absolutely normal back then. Well, 50 years ago. The Brazilian clock was not the same as, let's say, the German Swiss clock or something like this. A few years ago, I gave a little workshop in a tiny town with a fine music school in Germany. And it was really a tiny town. And to go back home, I had to pass through Zurich or something like this. So I'm waiting inside the train in the little town in Germany, taking this little train to a bigger station. And then I was going to take some other train to Zurich. And then I was taking a train to Paris. And there was a digital clock within sight inside the train. And I'm sitting and I'm watching the digital clock. The train was supposed to leave at 12 noon. And I'm sitting there, it's 11:57, 11:58, 11:59, and you could see the little seconds going by like this. So, it's 11:59 and 30 seconds, 11:59 and 45 seconds, 50 seconds, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 12, and the train started moving. It was a marvelous demonstration of a certain clock and a certain way of living by the clock, which I think is not universally shared. So I'm just trying to respond to what you said about at least we can agree on the clock. I'd say, no, we can't. It really depends. And it's very useful to have a clock, and it's useful to acknowledge this shared measurement of time. But ultimately, it's not universal. I think there's nothing universal about time other than time passes for all of us.
Well, yes, now I see what you're saying. Because I'm remembering the buses and trains in New York City, and the first time I went to Switzerland. And it was exactly like that. The schedule said that the tram would arrive at 1 p.m., and it was not there right before. But at 1 p.m., the doors were open.
Yeah, that's quite right.
And I was like, how does this happen? Because in New York, like, all you know is sometime within 30 minutes, either before or after the time it says on the schedule, your bus or subway car will be there.
Yeah.
And so I was, yes, I remember that now. And then digital time versus analog time.
Well, they're very different. Yeah.
And then we have telling time, which is interesting, because on an analog clock, you have to learn what the numbers mean and how to decipher them, I guess, or tell time. But the digital clock tells you the time.
That's part of it. So another way of looking at it is that an analog clock
Today
with a clock face gives you context. It says we are here relative to this context, and you can say, okay, so we are halfway through the day or something like this, and the digital clock gives you no context. It just gives you a number for the moment. So I think looking at an analog clock is a profoundly different experience from looking at a digital clock. They're giving two different types of information, and I think one responds differently. And of course, we have the 12-hour clock and the 24-hour clock, which is not a clock per se. It's a way of thinking about time. And I grew up in Brazil, as you know, and in Brazil, we grew up with the 24 hours. That means that, it's 12 o'clock noon, and then it becomes 1,300 hours, 1,400 hours, 1,500 hours. I grew up with that rather than 2 p.m. for 3 p.m., 4 p.m. or something like this. It can be very confusing. I remember an American student of mine here in Paris who messed up an important audition because he forgot to make a translation from AM, PM to the 24-hour clock. So he got the time wrong. The time for his important audition was something like 6 o'clock, well, 4 o'clock, and he showed up at 6 o'clock because he had a meltdown of a dysfunction of the 24-hour clock. Ladies and gentlemen, we were temporarily frozen, but it appears that Laura is slowly coming back and singing the song of coming back. It went like this, but I don't know how back she is really. Are you there, Laura?
Well, my internet was working really, really well for a very long time.
Good.
And all of it.
Oh, I don't know if I'm all alone in this broadcast here. My half of the screen with Laura in it has disappeared. So I may be all alone. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't try to get rid of Laura. It was an internet thing. Perhaps she will come back. And if she doesn't come back, I'll just talk to myself and by myself for a little while, assuming that this is being recorded and broadcast. So it's probably better that some fool like me talks nonstop rather than some fool like me just looks at the screen not talking. That would be very awkward. That would make time go by very, very slowly. Like you wouldn't really know what's happening. And the fool would look like a fool. Hey, it seems that Laura is back. So I will stop my monologue for now and say, hi, Laura, how you doing?
I don't know how I'm doing. Things that used to work don't always work. And, but because it's you and I know you can improvise, I was pretty sure that you were managing to carry on.
Quite.
But I missed the story of your student who missed his audition.
Well, just grosso modo, he was American in France where we used the 24-hour clock, and he made a wrong translation between AM, PM to the 24-hour clock, and he missed his audition. It's just an example of the clock as a cultural construct. There is no such thing as a universal clock. The French clock, the Brazilian clock, the American clock, the German Swiss clock, they're very different one from the other, both symbolically and psychologically, but also technically. The 12-hour clock and the 24-hour clock really feel very different. You can have 2 half days of 12 hours each, or you can have a whole day of 24 hours. It's not the same thing.
When you come to the US, do you feel different? Do you feel like that because of the time it goes in these 2 12-hour chunks? Does it feel different to you?
Yeah, it feels different. But I would say that when it comes to the clock, I am bilingual or bicultural. I'm quite comfortable with AM, PM, and I'm very comfortable with what I grew up with. It's the 1300 hours, 1400. It is 1530. It is 1730. I I grew up with that, and the American system is very streamlined. So I think I can do both reliably. Although time zones is another thing. Every year I miss between 6 to 8 lessons because I do a miscalculation of time zones. Students in Australia, they go into summertime differently. Southern hemisphere, northern hemisphere. Well, complicated.
Yeah, that's really confusing for me. Even though I have, like, on my digital phone, the world clock, I still can get confused about what's happening. And for a long time in the United States, we have the daylight savings time, but there's still one state that doesn't do that.
Which state?
Arizona.
No kidding.
And so in the summer, Arizona is on California time.
Mm-hmm.
And in the winter, it's on Colorado time. This is how I remember it.
That's good. Mm-hmm.
Because it excuse me, it just stays the same.
Mm-hmm.
And when I lived there, I really liked that, not jumping ahead an hour and falling back.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea that you could spring forward in time. I don't know. So then I was thinking about analog and digital, and I was thinking about a digital metronome since you started as a musician. And is this an analog metronome, the one that goes back and forth? Or is it?
No, that's analog. Yeah, it's a mechanical analog metronome where you wind it up and it goes like this. And at some point, it winds down and starts slowing down and then it stops. Yeah.
So as a musician, do you find those two systems different?
I'll tell you what. I'm gonna go get one of my metronomes to share it with you. It's right there on top of my piano. I'll be right back. I'll be right back.
Very cool. I think it's really funny how we live in time all the time. But sometimes we feel like we have an endless amount of time to do a job. And
uh-oh, she has frosted over. I see her face, her mouth half open. There's no sound. I don't know if I'm talking over her or not. I don't know if you listeners can see and hear me. I may be making a fool of myself. I'm used to it. There are pluses and minuses to everything in life, including the capacity to make a fool of yourself. Laura may be coming back just now. The screen is back again. Well, no, it's just a black screen with a white little thing going like this. She's back. Hi, Laura. How you doing?
I am good. And anyway, so I don't.
Yeah, it's how it goes. So here it is.
Oh,
Dr. Beat, by Boss. And this is a metronome from the 1980s. In fact, I have two of them. This I bought on eBay for $100, a lot of money. But it came with a box and in a very good state because the other one that I have was beginning to die or something like this. So this, although it's electronic, it's got a battery and everything, it's not a mechanical clock, but it is analog. It's not digital either. And it's very, very wonderful because it gives you a lot of different types of information. Here, this is a beat at 120, right? Now, if I come over here, if I come over here, I can put an offbeat. And if I put this, I can put an offbeat to the offbeat.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. And if I do this, I can put triplets in there.
Oh,
and if I do something like this, I can do like this is a bar of 4 beats. I just changed this for 4 beats. And it's showing the beats, the offbeats, the offbeat to offbeat, and the triplet, plus the downbeat of the 4/4 bar. Dr. Boss, Dr. Beat by Boss. Fantastic metronome, very helpful, very friendly, makes a wonderful sound. It vibrates a little bit. It has that smell of electronics that it's quite intoxicated. It's a real friend, and it's a kind of a mirror. If you're playing something and you turn the metronome on, the metronome says, Pedro, do you realize that you're rushing, Pedro, for no reason? You have time, Pedro, to think about the fingering here. You don't have to rush, Pedro. And sometimes the metronome says, Pedro, do you realize that you're dragging? You're being a lazy Brazilian, you're kind of dragging, Pedro. Actually, the metronome doesn't talk this way. It's very, very friendly and neutral, but it gives you a lot of information as to how you're occupying time as a musician. And I think for a musician, to use the metronome as this field of information about time is extremely useful. If anything, I have underutilized the metronome over the decades. Sometimes I regret it, and then I remember that it's better not to regret anything. So I say, je ne regrette rien. But generally speaking, the metronome is a real friend to a musician if you know how to use it. And that leads us to the main thing about our talk, which is the fact that time can slow down and speed up, and that if you want to, you can slow down time and speed up time. And because you can learn how to do this, you can become a master or a mistress of time. So I'll give you an example. I would like to do two little exercises with you, Laura, so that our viewers and ourselves can have a good time with an exercise that actually helps you slow down time and speed up time. The first one is very simple. They're both very simple, but the first one, you're just talking normally the way I'm talking right now, and you make a choice, which you can make at random or with a certain design, where you say, I'm going to lengthen a syllable of something that I'm saying. I'm going to lengthen a syllable. I just lengthened the first syllable of the word lengthen. So I'm going to lengthen. And as I lengthen that syllable, I have time. You know, nothing's going to happen. The world won't come to an end. Uh, the authorities are not going to ring on my door and say, Pedro, you're lengthening too much. My wife's not going to divorce me because I said lengthen or something like this. So I have nothing to lose by lengthening the syllable. And then in the middle of talking, I make a choice. I make a choice. I just make that choice to lengthen that syllable in choice, and I also made the choice to repeat it more than once. Again, my wife's still not knocking on my door, said, Pedro, I'm going to divorce you. Stop making a fool of yourself. So there are no negative consequences usually from deciding that you're going to lengthen a bit of time. For people who talk in public, who talk to other people, who broadcast their speeches or something like this idea that you can lengthen time by lengthening a sound or a silence is extremely liberating. So, Laura, I would like you to respond, to this little bit of thought here, this exercise, and you just in the middle of talking, you decide at random or to some design to lengthen some sound. Laura, the mic's yours.
So then I think, oh, what one am I going to lengthen?
That's good. Your timing was perfect because you said, what am I going to lengthen? And then you froze. Your screen has frozen. I don't know what the viewers can see in their homes, in their comfy homes. I'm just going to improvise for a little while until Laura defrosts. But now she's frozen with this interesting, nice smile of hers. She said, I don't know what to lengthen. And the consequence of her saying lengthen is that suddenly she really lengthened that image that stopped in mid-flight. You see how powerful this exercise is? You really made time stop just by saying lengthen, and you just stopped in time and space.
Up in time and space. So I practiced when I was frozen.
Good.
And I said, what if I didn't have to decide when I was going to lengthen anything.
All right, so I'm going to put it this way. If I lengthen syllables, the authorities are not going to come to my door and my wife's not going to divorce me. So the consequences are not that severe. However, there are risks and dangers in every situation without exception. And depending on how you lengthen your vowels, you could become incomprehensible to your listeners. So that's a potential problem, that you're lengthening your syllables just to calm down and feel that you own your time. And your listeners will suddenly say, I don't understand a word of what she's saying. I'm just saying the risk exists. So you don't have to decide, you don't have to design it. You just have to be alert to those risks and navigate them according to how often you lengthen and
Well,
for
now
how
I'm
long.
here.
Hi.
I'm
Thanks
back
for coming
and
back.
gone and back.
Gone and back.
So we are seem to be lengthening and shortening the internet.
Incredible power.
But one thing I discovered.
Mm-hmm. Uh-oh, we have a lengthened silence from Laura. But the thing about the silence is that it's part of language, so it's also part of the exercise. It means that you can lengthen some vowels. Hello, I'm lengthening the vowel. You can lengthen some consonants. Hello, L, I was lengthening the L. And you can lengthen some silences. You can lengthen some silences. Very powerful technique for yourself and for your listeners. Right now, Laura has so lengthened her silence that we don't even see her anymore. See how powerful this technique really is. So, you're talking normally, you're talking agitatedly, animatedly, you're really into something, and then all of a sudden, you put a kind of a pause. A musician might call it the fermata. The fermata is the lengthening of a sound or a silence beyond its normal length. Happy birthday, dear Pedro. Fermata. Happy birthday to you. Laura, you came back.
I popped back in. I'm going to have to go to the computer store today.
Oh, yeah?
I think so. It's a new thing in my time.
Uh-huh.
That wasn't in my original schedule.
Mm-hmm.
But I will fit it in.
That's good. Thank you. That's very good. So the second exercise, the first one is the lengthening, and the second one's counting. We know it from childhood, where some parents of some children tell the children to count if they are about to get mad, or before they punch the little brother, before they cry, before they shout, before they say a bad word, before they destroy the house. You just count from 1 to 3 or something like this. My exercise is a kind of a variation on this, but it's also something else, because I'm going to count from 1 to 12 for various different reasons. Start very banal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Already I have proved to you that I know mathematics, because I can count from 1 to 12. It's pretty good. Not everybody can do it. So, that's one merit of the exercise. It gives you a little toehold onto mathematics. But now what I'm going to do is to count from 1 to 12 to a rhythmic structure, and I will essentially chant the numbers. It goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And it's a divine exercise that makes you feel good. It gives you a certain regularity. You're doing something to an
So I
inner
don't know.
metronome.
I really.
Yeah, is having issues. So, Laura, can you?
I love how calm that sounds when you do that rhythmical counting.
Yeah. Well, this
It's
rhythm.
very peaceful.
Go on. Yeah, this rhythm regulates the
But
passage
Pedro
of
is
time.
frozen.
Oh, Pedro is frozen.
I
Can
think
we
freezing
Pedro?
in time. That's just one of the things they say.
Uh-huh.
There you are. We are back. And you are so calm when you do the 1, 2, 3. I love that.
Okay, you started. You did the first 3. Go on to the rest of the exercise. I want to see how you're going to do it.
Okay, I missed 10, 11, 12, but we'll see. Okay, so we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If you had the metronome on, I put long syllables in there somewhere, didn't I?
Well, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is that you did a wonderful job, sounded very good. You got the exercise, your performance was excellent. And the only bad news is that right after 12, you made a potentially self-denigrating remark about how you may have lengthened something and maybe disobeyed the metronome. And I'm saying ultimately, it's, I think, a spiritual experience to count from 1 to 12. And it is that you enter the temple of the mind and the body and the space and time, and you feel really, really good. And you don't want to suddenly exit that temple with an editing remark about something that you did or did not do or something like this. So I'll do just the end, 10, 11, 12. And I'm going to stay in that mood. I'm not going to break the mood by giving an elbow to myself or something like this. So count just the last bar, 10, 11, 12. Let's see you do that. And you just stay, put a silence in there and stay with the silence after 10, 11, 12.
10, 11, 12.
Thank you. That was great. That's the perfect smile to go with the exercise. It's very good.
And it changes how you feel in the moment
Right.
about counting
Mm-hmm.
and about time.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like magical, Pedro.
Absolutely. I mean, we can try to explain the exercise. We cannot explain time or define it. But the exercise, we can hint at how it works. One is that you're using your voice, and that's already a powerful thing in itself. Two is that you're maintaining a note, you're chanting, and that probably has a neuroscience component that's going to calm down your brain. But also, it brings to mind immediately a kind of a religious feeling because in every temple and in every religion, chanting is part of it. It doesn't matter if it's going to be Christianity or Buddhism or Islam, the chanting is part of it because it really kind of connects you, calms you down. Plus, the 12, it's not a banal number. 12, we know the 12 months, where the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 jurors in a jury, the 12 apostles. There are mathematical reasons why 12 is a very powerful number. 3 times 4, 4 times 3. It's a really big deal. So you're dealing with a numerological construct that has its own power. Plus, you're doing it in such a way that you say 3 numbers and then you have a silence. You say the 3 numbers in a silence, a silence. And in the silence, you can decide to enjoy yourself, to breathe, to open up, to wait. The silence is your friend. The numbers are your friend, and the silence is your friend. I'll do just the beginning again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Feels good. Very simple exercise. It has risks and dangers. You risk feeling so good that you forget you're in public online or something like this, or the risk exists that you will have a religious vision and then try to convert humanity to your religious vision. You know how complicated that can be. It's only half a joke. So, Laura, how about you do another round from 1 to 12 for us?
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Super. Very excellent. That's great. There are linguistic reasons why this exercise is so good. We are using a combination of vowels, consonants, and also diphthongs. One, five, I, five. So vocally, it's very friendly in English, well, in every language, but in English, it's very, very friendly to the tongue and the throat and the lips. It's just an easy, reassuring, pleasant, caressing, important exercise. And I think it changes your relationship with time, according to my experience and my conviction. But it's up to you to find out if I am just talking nonsense or if indeed this exercise will have the power to help you in this particular way.
And it would be fun. There's comments below. If you play with this for a day or two, come back and make a comment, and I will share it with Pedro, and he can respond. Maybe you're on Facebook, but I didn't really find you, but maybe you are.
I quit Facebook a year and a half ago. I was there for, I don't know, 10, 12 years, and I took a political stance. Rightly or wrongly, I thought that Facebook, among other things, worked as hate speech for profit. And I became convinced that Facebook helped elect Bolsonaro in Brazil, who is a far-right dictator, Boris Johnson in England, who is very problematic, Donald Trump in the States. So I became anti-Facebook from a political point of view, and I quit. I haven't quit Instagram, even though Instagram is part of Facebook. Laura is frozen again, and I'm now talking politics all by myself. I don't know if she can hear me. Oh, Laura, I'm sorry I'm not on Facebook, but Laura, I'm on Instagram, and you and I are friends on Instagram, so we can communicate that way, right? Time's clicking, the clock is moving forwards. Sooner or later, we will have other appointments to take care of. We don't know if Laura will ever come back to finish this broadcast. So all I can do really is to count. Oh no, we have now 3 of us. That's incredible.
Yeah, is that incredible? I don't know.
All right, that's good.
Hey, I don't know. Somebody bought my platform, this little StreamYard platform.
Uh-huh.
And then maybe they're messing with it and it's not working so good. But I'll write to them too. When I have time, I'll write to them.
That's quite right. And another approach is to realize that things happen and technology has its ups and downs, connection, electronics, satellites, cables, computers. Um, and I have come to feel that the little degree of unreliability in technology makes for interesting communications online because you have to adapt and improvise, stay calm, make a few jokes, or shout. And I would say it spices up the online communications. Yeah.
Well, we had some comments. Catherine says she can't stop counting now.
Oh, that's good. I said there are risks and dangers. Catherine, it's good that you're counting, but you have to make lunch for yourself and for your family, and you have to earn a living. So you have to learn how to count innerly, in the middle of making lunch and earning a living. That will be very useful.
We had another comment, Pedro, where a friend says her mom has dementia,
Mm-hmm.
but she still wears her wristwatch.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't say whether it's analog, but I would imagine it's an analog wristwatch, and it keeps her kind of comfortable and connected to, I guess, habit of knowing where she was in time.
Yeah. I know, for instance, when I go to sleep, I don't like going to sleep in a room without a timepiece of some sort. I have an old little cell phone without internet. that I use as an alarm clock, I sleep better knowing that there's a timepiece next to me. And otherwise, I'm going to keep waking up and saying, have I overslept? Have I overslept? Have I overslept? So I'm just saying that sometimes the timepiece has a calming effect to me and to your friend's mother. I think it's logical.
They used to tell us when you would get a new kitten or a new puppy and it was missing its mother, to put one of those wind-up clocks, the old kind that went tick, 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 in a blanket beside the new member of your family, and that it would just calm them down a little bit.
That's good.
So it's interesting how, and a lot of what you said is what is our opinion of something? How do we feel about it? Do I feel like I have enough time? If I think I have enough time to do this job, this chore, this activity, I can get it done. If I make myself anxious by thinking, oh no, I don't have enough time. It's sort of like you said, you would wake up, if you didn't have a timepiece there, you would wake up anxious that you were oversleeping. I can use, I think that anxiety uses up time somehow.
All right. I think it does. That's for sure. But I would say, let me make 2 remarks. The first one is that we often talk about not having time, but the problem of having too much time is just as difficult to deal with. Too much time to do something, you will not do it, or something like this. So not having time, problematic. Having too much time, problematic. That's idea number 1. And idea number 2, I have no idea what it was. I forget now. Let's say you said something time. Yeah. You said there's a very broad effect called time anxiety. And let's hope that by singing from 1 to 12, we could lessen the time anxiety. Yeah, that'll be good.
It'd be really great. Be very helpful to people. So I was thinking about dancing and music and time, and how in dancing, a lot of times, so people count to make a way to be together. But if you have an ensemble that works together, they can actually start to breathe together. And so they can move together on the counts without this rigidity that happens when you say, this 1, this 2, this 3. But they can all together just go 1, 2, 3. And it has movement like there's movement in music. The movement isn't rigid. And somehow early in dance training, people get very count bound. And at some point, the challenge for the teacher is to get them to feel the rhythm. And I think that this counting to 12 might be a wonderful exercise to explore, like at the beginning of a rehearsal. Have you ever done it with a group of people, doing it together?
Yeah, I have done this exercise and others of this nature with groups of people. It's very interesting. But instead of talking about this particular exercise, let me make a larger or more general statement, because you talk about counting and dancers, and in the beginning you get very counting oriented. I'm going to put it this way. To begin with, I think counting is an archetypical activity. In other words, something...
Man, I really want to hear this.
I may be talking to myself by myself, but I'll do it. I'm used to it. So, counting, the little kid, the baby learns to count. He starts kind of going like this and distinguishing 1, 2, and 3 or something like this. And sometimes the little kid that learns to count from 1 to 10 can be extremely happy, proud of herself for having learned to count from 1 to 10, because it's a really big deal. The little kids entering the entire universe of counting. And I think counting, it's just a really, really, really big deal. For every human being, for musicians and for dancers, it's a very big deal. Then we could say that counting can happen in a lot of different ways. One is, or different attitudes. I have a student who is afraid of not knowing how to count. And, when it comes to dance, he dances and he is afraid of not knowing how to count. And that means that his effort to count is based on fear. And I think counting from fear and counting from joy are two different activities. The counting doesn't go in the same way, and it doesn't produce the same sequence of timely events. So, depending on your attitude, counting changes, and the feeling and the result really changes. And I think it's possible to learn the mathematics of counting, for instance, in our little exercise, or in a tango, or in a choreography, or in a string quartet where you're trying to play together. So you learn to count together. So you learn the mathematics. You can learn the linguistics of counting. For instance, if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're pushes and pulls. The words don't have the same weight. The downbeat has a different feeling from the second beat and the third beat, or something like this. So this goes beyond mathematics and goes towards linguistics and how a word in the sequence relates to its neighbors, or something like this. And once you internalize various dimensions of the counting process, you may have the feeling that you're not counting, but in fact, you're counting so well, but so well, but so well that you're not really alert to the counting. And in that moment, you can say, I'm just doing it by feeling, but probably your feeling is, I would say, a very elaborate form of counting, a marvelous form of counting. I think to begin with, we need to count mathematically and linguistically, and in due course, we can internalize it and do it apparently by feeling. And I'm saying the feeling is actually superfine counting.
Maybe counting with, yeah. Oh no, that's really interesting. Maybe not counting like the way we think of counting with the brain, but counting with the body. Somehow the body knows, moving with somebody else, that this takes this much time and coming back takes this much time. And you know the amount of time it takes. It's interesting.
All right.
There's
Laura,
yes.
I'm going to make a note to myself by opening my email program and pretending to start writing an email to you, because I want to share with you, and then you can share it with your friends, a clip of these two women in Sweden dancing to folk instruments. And it is the mastery of time and space and sound and steps and togetherness and doing things very organic. It's very, very fantastic. It would be interesting to talk to the women and to the men involved, see how they're really processing the event. But the event shows a divine counting or something like this. So I'll send it to you. It would take me too long to find it right now and do a screen share. Instead, I'll send you the link. You watch it, and then you can circulate it as I would say, a marvelous, multi-dimensional demonstration of time, space, and counting. Divine, absolutely divine.
It's you know what? I feel a lot better about time now. I feel relaxed about it.
Well, that's good.
Which is interesting because I have periods of time where I just say, well, there's enough time to get everything done. And then somehow I do get everything done. But when I had originally looked at my to-do list, I was like, oh, heck no, there's no way, But if I say, well, I can, or I just say, I can get whatever is most important done today in a timely way, an easy in time way, because somehow when we're easy in time, it's much more fun.
The other day, I took my to-do list and I cut it in half. I just eliminated half of everything. I feel good. I feel better. It's much easier. It's quite manageable. It's a 3 month time frame. I'll have time over 3 months to do my brief to-do list. So there are all sorts of strategies, and some are very simple. Psychologically, it may not be simple, but I just eliminated half of everything. Tasks, aims, hopes, aspirations. Let me have half as many. And I felt a lot better immediately. It's been very, very efficient. Yeah.
Kind of lighter and happier.
Quite.
I think that people who are talented and multi-talented can do many things, want to do many things. I remember the very first time I felt this panic about time. I had gone to a Jacob's Pillow, a famous dance festival, and I had to sit down, and they said, now you have to pick your classes. And they had 3 classes in 3 different studios. And often I wanted to do every single class. And because they were all at the same time, I'm like, why don't you put this one up here so I could do this one and that one?
That's right.
And they were, and I remember this wanting to do everything and not having the time to do everything. And I think partly the internet makes this feeling for people because there's so much.
Right.
So much available. and to know, now I think I might try the 1, 2, 3 when I think about wanting to do something and see, do I really want to do that from that place of calmness? And see if it changes. There's a little experiment, a little game, and see if that changes that feeling that well, there's also a lot of marketing that's like this. You have to do this right now or you will miss it forever. And I'm like,
absolutely. No.
Maybe I'm supposed to miss it forever.
That's quite right.
That's make me happier to miss it forever.
So Laura, soon I will have to get off a line to take care of my next appointment. And I'm this it's a little sad, but let me put it this way. How about I conclude this talk by counting from 1 to 12 in Portuguese, my mother tongue?
Oh, yes. That would be beautiful.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Uh-oh, I managed to freeze Laura again.
I'm back.
I'm back. That's good. That's good.
I didn't freeze till the 12.
Yeah, that's good. I didn't freeze until the 12. That's a good name for a rock band.
Yes. Pedro, thank you so much for these beautiful ideas about time and being in time and mastering, I think maybe mastering our concept of time or our attitude towards time.
That's good. Yeah, that's quite right. Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me. And thanks for even letting me improvise and talk to myself by myself half of the time. Very generous of you. Thank you. I enjoy that.
Anytime. I will look forward to when we meet again, whether online or in person, and have a very wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. And you also have a wonderful summer.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.